this is the end of the year, have a friend with me, weapon in my hand, the command of my men with me. Then I remember my Elias is expecting me. Not only that, my Elias is expecting. We gotta go, gotta get the job done. Gotta start a new nation, gotta meet my son. The bullets have to run, the bullets have to run. We move undercover and we move as one. Through the night we have one shot to live another day. We cannot let a stray gunshot give us away. We will fight up close, seize the moment and stay in it. It's either that or meet the business end of a bayonet. The code word is Rochambeau, dig me? Rochambeau. You have your orders now, go man, go. So the American experiment begins with my friends all scattered to the winds. Lawrence is in South Carolina, redefining bravery. We'll never be free until we end slavery. When they finally drive the British away, Lafayette is there waiting in Chesapeake Bay. How did we know that this plan would work? We had a spy on the inside, that's right. Hercules Mulligan! Had a spy on the British government. I take the measurements, information, and then I smuggle it.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. I know we still have a few folks joining us, but I wanted to get started today. Hi, my name is Emily Damon, and I am the chair of the steering committee at Watertown Forward. And Watertown Forward is a community initiative that seeks to expand the number of voices in the charter review process through a series of events that are designed to educate, empower, and engage residents. These charter chats are an opportunity to share views and ideas about the charter review process. We hope that through events like this, community members can connect with others interested in local government and become more informed about the charter review process, as well as ask questions, raise concerns, and offer comments. We ask that you continue to stay up to date by attending CRC meetings and events, reading any MailChimp that we send out, watch charter chat recordings, and participate in CRC subcommittees. This meeting is being recorded, so for anyone who can't attend today, they can view at another time. We also want to alert everyone that this meeting may run a little bit longer today, and moving forward, you can maybe expect that this extension will continue so we can cover all of the amazing content related to the charter review at this stage in the process. Of course, if you have to leave early, please do, but we do encourage you, if you can stay, to please stay and participate. I will be passing it off to Janice, who will go over our meeting guidelines, agenda, and weekend updates. Janice.
Awesome. Thanks, Emily. And Tiffany just linked in the chat the Watertown Forward survey, and we are still actively collecting responses for that. So please feel free to continue to share the word. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for taking the time out on this beautiful day, although intermittently raining as of late, to join us. And I want to just say thank you to all of you who continue to join us at these charter chats. Join us, at all of our events, really. We've had a few other events outside of charter chats. It's been a long process and it's not easy, and you've stayed the course, and we are so glad you're here. Otherwise, we would be talking to each other and it wouldn't be nearly as much fun. So thank you very much for showing up and staying with us. Meeting guidelines are pretty standard at this point, but for anyone who hasn't attended a charter chat before, we follow the basic Zoom etiquette. Make sure you raise your hand to be recognized. You can either raise your physical hand or you can use the reactions button on the bottom right bar of your screen. If you click that, there are a few emojis, and there's also a bar that says raise hand that you can use to participate, and we will call on you in order. The chat function is open as always to all participants. We encourage you to use the chat for comments and questions that can't be addressed live or you would prefer not to address live. We do have chat monitors that will be available to address any questions that they can in the chat, and also linking relevant documents and articles throughout this meeting to support what we'll be presenting today. And just keep in mind that if you are participating in the chat, anybody who's on the phone won't be able to see or share those comments. You'll also notice there's a participants list on the right, and that will show you who is here at the meeting. You can chat amongst yourselves via private message if you would like. And again, if you're on the phone, you won't be able to see that, but if you do participate, please make sure you just introduce yourself if you have a comment via phone. Most importantly, we ask that people bring their curiosity, listen with an open mind, and just be mindful of the time so that everybody can be heard. And we as the meeting moves forward, we may start to call folks out of order who have their hand raised, just to ensure that we're sharing the microphone and keeping things equitable throughout the meeting. And it's also important to note, we also state that the individual views of facilitators and Watertown Forward members do not necessarily reflect Watertown Forward as a whole during this meeting, because we are also residents of Watertown. So on to the agenda. We've gone through 1 and half of 2. And today we will, we were going to use a poll, but we've changed our mind. So I'm going to dive right into the weekend updates, which is something that's fairly new to our charter chats. It's basically just a list of anything important and interesting related to the charter review process right now. We're not quite there yet. And then we'll provide a high-level overview of the CRC meeting with some basics, followed by an information segment that was prepared by the Ed Committee that we're calling Charter Close-Ups. And we'll basically be zooming in on a particular topic at each charter chat. And today we'll be zooming in on balance of power between the executive and legislative branches. And so that should be just a quick, fun way to get some information about where we are in the process. And the second half of the meeting comprises the third of our expert panel series with a follow-up discussion. And we are delighted to have Town Council President Mark Sedaris here today, as well as Councillor Carolyn Bays, to share their thoughts with all of us. So we really look forward to that. So getting right along to it. The first, we can actually move to the weekend updates slide. Perfect. So the first update is really just a reminder to anyone who's not aware, there are currently 2 open seats on the council. So those for November elections in District D and District A. And those who are interested in running for town council and other local boards can take out candidate papers from the town clerk's office, and they must be submitted by July 27th. And the general election, as you may know, is November 2nd, and if necessary, a preliminary election will be held September 14th. There are 2 people who have announced their candidacy, Connie Henry in District D and Mike Hanlon in District A. So feel free to put in your papers if you are interested in running. It's always great to have some healthy competition on the ballot. Next, I would like to just share some information, some updates about the Zoom settings at CRC meetings. We had the communications subcommittee submitted a formal request to have certain features put back into the meetings at the CRC meetings. And we are very pleased and grateful that the chat function has been reinstated. Yay. And we also are able to fully see the Q&A. All attendees can now see all questions and answers. And we're still hoping that the participant list will be open to the public at some point in the future. I know that Mark and others are working on making that available to us. They've heard us, they know it's important. And I just want to recognize and appreciate those 2 features that you did bring back. I think it makes for a much more collaborative, community-based environment in those meetings. I really enjoy it. And I think others on the call also share that sentiment. So moving on to proposals. This is a big topic, and we have some great information to share with you today on proposals. So I know just some housekeeping pieces. I think Collins Center has sort of opened the floodgates and said, please submit all proposals for anywhere in the charter at this point. We will be responsible for putting them in the right place and sorting them. Before they were sort of asking for proposals in Article 2 and then Article 3. And I think at this point, they just are asking that people submit any proposals in any article at this point. So we encourage you to continue to submit proposals, and we'll talk more about that later. And I know there was a little bit of confusion. We started talking about this last meeting about where the proposals exist on the website. And really, we discovered 2 buckets where any submitted proposals, whether it be by a CRC member or a community member, where they live on the website. One is a place called Suggested Charter Changes that is on the CRC website, and Tiffany will link those in the chat for you. And that is mostly houses the proposals submitted by CRC members at this point. And then the other bucket is the public comment domain. So residents are submitting through the public comment domain. Some are using templates, some are not. Unfortunately, those proposals that have been submitted by residents are getting lumped in with all public comments, including, fix my sidewalk. So, there's a long list of comments in there, and it's been updated as of May 4th. So it's really a matter of having to go in and tease out what's a proposal versus what's just a general comment from the public about something unrelated to the charter or not charter relevant. And so that there's still a little bit of a question mark about where the resident proposals are going, who is pulling those out, and are they joining the conversation at the CRC meetings? That's a really important topic that we want to discuss today with a little bit more length. So what we understand so far, and feel free to correct me for any counselors in the room, is that the counselors are really responsible for going into those public comments and pulling out any relevant proposals and bringing those conversations to the table, which is a lot of work. And then there's the issue of the updates. So the website isn't updated daily, certainly, but we're finding there's maybe like a 2 or 3 week lag time. So there are a lot of proposals rolling in at this point as the work picks up. And so, as I said, the last update is from May 4th. So we may have, there may be proposals that we haven't actually seen yet that do exist somewhere in the netherworlds of the internet. So Chris McClure and the communications subcommittee are working collaboratively on making sure that's updated so that we can see what residents are proposing for charter revision. So with that said, in an effort, what we'd like to do at this point is we would like to recognize the residents who have submitted proposals. And I know that they haven't really been brought to the table at CRC meetings. They've been really discussing mostly the CRC proposals. And there are some official proposals that exist in that comments bucket. And so what we've done is we've gone through that very long 38-page document, and we've pulled out the resident proposals from that document to share with you today, not only to bring these to the surface, but also to shed some light on some of the trends that we're seeing across the board. So we have created some pie charts to just sort of show you the proposal distribution based on what we have found in those buckets. So this information, again, is what we have as of May 4th. And I'm sure there are more to discuss, but this is what we have as of today. Now, before we begin, I want to just sort of qualify what you're seeing here. This is not official data. There is a decent amount of subjectivity that went into this work, which doesn't invalidate it, but it does mean that what you're seeing should be interpreted with those conditions in mind. So what you're seeing here is a chart that distributes all of the resident submitted proposals to date that we have found. There were 19 that I found along with a few other Watertown Forward colleagues. And absent a clear guide to how proposals are being collected and interpreted, we sort of came up with our own criteria to determine eligibility. And so anything that was formally identified as a proposal was pulled out of that document, obviously. And then also we added any public comment with the clear intent of being formally considered for charter revision, which that's the subjective piece. But we included that second qualifier because, well, really for reasons of equity and inclusion. Without clear guidance on how, when, why, where to submit proposals, we wanted to be sure to account for those who may have submitted without formal language or without the use of a template. This may or may not align with the CRC's approach for considering proposals from the public, but nonetheless, we thought they were important to include. So we did use the platform of idea categories to categorize them, which again isn't perfect because everything is so interrelated in the charter we're finding. but they may not perfectly exist in each category. So what you're seeing here is that most of these 19 proposals exist under balance of power. And then we have a decent amount in transparency, evaluation, disclosure, and then sort of evenly distributed through the others. And so just a quick snapshot of what are residents thinking? What are they most concerned about based on who has submitted? And again, 19 isn't a huge number, but that's what we have. And those voices are still powerful, even though they're 19. So we wanted to just recognize those. And then the second pie chart is the proposals from the CRC. So that number seems really high, and I'll tell you why. There, within each proposal, and these are all on the website, there are many different bullets within each proposal that the CRC member had submitted. So, you know, they may have 10 different suggestions under balance of power. So what I did was we counted all of those because they're all different ideas. So this is the number that we came up with. And of those, you can see some similarities and trends. There was a little bit more in balance of power and a little bit less in some of the other areas. But it's just kind of nice to see visually what's happening in the minds of the residents and in the CRC and see if those match and how different they are. And then the third is just a combination of the two. The third slide is a combo of all of the proposals so far. So just some food for thought. I am not paying attention to the chat, so if there's anything that I'm missing, please feel free to interrupt me. Otherwise, I will forge ahead.
You're all good, Janice.
Okay, great. Thanks, Tiffany. So again, just really want to recognize those who are submitting proposals and just giving feedback in general to the CRC. This is, you know, it's really important that they hear our voices. We really hope that some of the formal proposals that have been submitted by the public will make their way into the conversation a little bit more clearly as we move forward. But this is what we're looking at as of May 4th. And those are all linked in the chat, just so you can kind of peek at those. Again, it's not official data, but it's just kind of something that we interpreted here in Watertown Forward. So continue to submit. We do still have 2 templates that you can use to submit proposals, and those will also be linked in the chat. There's a long form and a short form just to help you structure your thoughts around that. There's also 2 examples of uses of those templates on our website. If you want to take a look at someone else's real live proposal that they have submitted, you can look at those there as well. I think the last piece is really just to encourage folks to keep the conversation going and to continue to connect offline and even join some existing discussion groups. There have been some really great grassroots efforts behind a proposal for a Human Rights Commission. And so anybody who is working on a proposal or in a discussion group in the community that is looking for maybe a little bit more energy behind a project or wants to work with someone to help build a proposal, please put your information in the chat and what it is that you're working on, because we also want to help people connect and maybe work on this together as a team. And I think I blew through that at lightning speed, but I think that's everything that I have in the weekend updates section. And we have a couple minutes if anyone, I know Alana, you've had your hand up, so I want to just recognize that. And I didn't mean to ignore you the whole time. I just want to make sure we got through that, but we have a few minutes, so feel free to ask a question or make a comment. Oh, you're muted. It's okay. At this point, that's your thing. So okay. Please stay consistent.
Sorry.
For all of
I don't think I want it to be my thing. Anyway, okay. Yeah, I actually, my hand has gone up and down, so that's fine. But 2 things about the, one is I think those pie charts are very useful. Thank you for doing them. And I hope that you can update the one from the community members, particularly up to, I'm not sure when you'll get these, but to include things that were sent up through the last meeting. So up through the 17th or 18th, because I'm guessing that there was a flurry sent in advance of that next meeting.
Yes, I agree. Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Is
You're
that
welcome.
everything? I want to make sure.
One other quick thing. I myself am concerned when I see that the public, there's a big drop off between the number of proposals submitted by members of the public that concern the charter review process itself. And then that goes down to 0 from the charter review council, whatever members.
Mhm, mhm.
That
And I-
discrepancy concerns me.
I
Just putting that
agree,
out.
and as part of the team who put some of these pie charts together, I will say that for a while the Collins Center was asking for proposals in order by article, and I think we might see more of those proposals in some of those other areas as we move through the charter. But now they've sort of opened it and said, give us everything you've got. I thought of that same thing. I said, why aren't we seeing anything here and here? I thought, oh, maybe because people haven't really addressed that specifically per article, but it is still just
That
interesting.
does make sense. Yeah.
Great. Okay, so we are moving. I think we transition at 5:50. Yeah, great, perfect. So I'm going to hand the reins off to Tia. I think you even have a few extra minutes to work with. That is my Sunday gift to you. And thank you very much for your time.
Hi, everybody. Great to see you all today on this kind of strange weather weirding day. What I'm going to do in this next section is kind of do a brief recap of the CRC on Tuesday. And this is structured around the area of most interest to both residents and the CRC, which is the balance of power. So if we go to the next slide, let's just take a quick look at what happened at the last CRC. And there are two key votes. You know, the first one was, there's been a lot of discussion about how our counselors are working really hard. There was a lot of conversation about, you know, how they could gain support from the council, you know, in terms of their work with the council. And there was a vote that to add staff, which is great. So there's a second vote as well. It was on a proposal from former state rep current member of the CRC, John Hecht, who had one to on the balance of power and expanding the town council's policy role. That was unanimously accepted, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. Other items that came up was, you know, continuing the discussion about town council at public forums. This will be moving forward, balance of power. Moving forward, in terms of the discussion on the charter will be, you know, town council may be considered next, but there was also a note that they may not be moving through the charter kind of article by article. And then if we move to the next slide, there was some discussion about the timing. It's kind of, this is, you know, where we are. You know, kind of May 18th, we've been talking about the town council. We're going to be moving into further conversation about the executive branch. And then as we move into August, into July, you'll see Article 4, 5, and 6, elected offices, financial procedures, administrative organization, and, you know, Article 7 and 8. There's been kind of the key one item I would note that I've observed is that there is, they continue to test as ideas are brought up, whether any particular change would require legislative approval, and with a focus on getting the any revisions in front of the voters, then that test continues to say, well, no, we don't want to have that large a change just yet, or it hasn't risen to that level. And then with a focus to getting it to the town council, or getting it to the voters, and there's a certain number of days or weeks that the deliberations have to be concluded. So when they're concluded, just to remind you, they go back to the town council for a vote. And then at that point, if it is approved, and assuming there's no item on the charter that would require legislative approval, it then goes to the voters. So in terms of the idea about a charter close-up, the topic for consideration that the Education Committee has put for us today is the idea of balance of power. And I'm sure if you all dial back to your, high school civics classes, you're going to remember that we have a balance of power set up at the national level. We have a legislative branch that makes the laws. We have an executive branch, which is, you're going to, test me on this. The executive branch helps execute the laws, and then you've got the judicial branch, which helps interpret the laws. So this is kind of the fundamentals of our Constitution. As we think about that, we think about what does that mean at the local level? So why don't we move to the next slide and just kind of take a look at that a moment. There should be, okay, never mind. We flash forward. And so Watertown then at that point also has a government that is set up to kind of think about both the separation of powers and the balance of power, and has checks and balances. And this is Article 2 and Article 3 in our charter. So I want to take a moment, and it's kind of interesting that one of the founders of our Constitution had a quote that was, "The true test of good government is an aptitude and tendency to produce a good administration." And John Hecht put forth a proposal that, as I mentioned, was unanimously supported by all the members of the CRC, that was taking a look at a few different areas, clarifying and strengthening the policy making role of the council, giving the town council exclusive power to set fees and make or delegate the making of rules and regulations, strengthening the town council role regarding certain appointments, and increase the visibility of the town in policymaking. There were some technical changes as well about specifying the number of votes, remove the town auditor or the clerk of council. All of this comes into the sensibility of how we are thinking about where power is concentrated or balanced between both our executive branch, which in our case is a town manager, a professional town manager, and an elected town council. I think if we move to the next slide, it's a bit of a mystery what's next. Yes, I like that. that's the slide I expected. And it comes up with the, we have this tension between politics and professionalism. So as Watertown kind of thinks about both, what is kind of, as we think about, we've given our town council additional staff support. The proposal by John Hecht, which was unanimously adopted, is saying you've got a greater policymaking role. So is that setting a standard for greater professionalism, as we work to elect our town councilors? And then our town manager, which we want as a professional town manager, to do the administration of our government. As we have asked for greater communication, greater disclosure and evaluation, greater recognition of public preferences and priorities, are we asking our town manager to have a heightened political sensitivity as these two kind of, not chambers, really branches of our local government have to work together to deliver for Watertown. So this is, I leave this kind of frame as we think about the balance of power, and as the CRC continues to move through the charter, because there's no one area that specifically, says this is the balance of power in the charter. It is woven in and out. Articles 2 and 3 is where it's concentrated, but there are other articles within the charter where the authority of particular areas are addressed with one kind of branch or the other branch. So I leave it at that comment and have you thinking about balance of power, where you have in your proposals put forth ideas, how you've seen them come up, and how we think about this. And I use this as a tee up, a tee up for our panel conversation with Mark and with Caroline. And as they speak to what priorities they think are most important in the charter. So at this point, I was given the task of abbreviating my section, and I've done so successfully. And I'm going to now pass this over to Larry. And I am sure my scintillating discussion of balance of power has triggered all sorts of questions for you all, but the next section will be a great place to bring them up and have our counselors who are here in the panel kind of respond to how they're viewing it and where they see these new changes to the charter shifting things some. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Larry.
Tia, before you take over, send it to Larry, we do have time for some questions. We have another like maybe 10, 20 minutes based on this. So if we want, we can use it or we can move it on, Larry. It's totally up to you. I just wanted to give a read on that. Thoughts, Larry?
Okay, well, we could take, if a couple of people have some questions right now, we want to take maybe 5 minutes or so for that. We want to make sure that we give sufficient time to Mark and Carolyn to share some of their insights and perspectives with us, and we'll be able to continue to get into these topics. So is there a question? We can kind of look in the participant list if somebody wanted to make a comment or a question right now, and if not, we'll move on.
No questions from the chat,
Okay.
and I'm not seeing any on
Okay,
the
so
participants.
why don't we do this? Because questions will continue to come up, and we're very happy.
I just saw a hand.
Oh,
Nope.
okay.
Oh, wait. There it is. Counselor Tony.
Tony, all right, Tony, go ahead.
Actually, I don't have any question on this. I didn't get my hand up fast enough before Tia took over. So I have a question on the first part. Where can we find those 19 proposals?
Mm-hmm.
And then I know that we were all asked to submit our final list of proposals by Friday to my ward for the remaining articles, Article 5 through Article 9. However, I wasn't under the impression that we should be looking at these proposals and submitting them on behalf of residents. So I'd like to do that. And so if you could make those available, I'd like to read them carefully and then pass them on, not in article by article, but just as general proposals.
Sure. So to answer your question, Tony, I have, so the 19 came from that 38-page document, and I have them categorized by number. They're all itemized. Every single comment has a number. And so I just put what the number is that had the proposal idea. And then I also attached what category it belongs in, like, item number 14, balance of power. Item number, whatever. So I can make that available. I don't have it neat and tidy right now, but I can make it available for folks who might be interested in looking at it themselves. Again, that was just our interpretation based on the criteria that we came up with. Somebody else might have included more or less based on their opinion. But there are certainly at least 6 in there that are official. This is my proposal. Love Janice Hudson or whoever it is. And the rest are sort of gray. So I'll make those available. Thank you very much.
I'm not saying I would submit all of them. I'm just simply saying I'd like to review them to see which, some of them may be duplicates of that have been already submitted by counselors, by committee members.
Great.
Janice, what do you think would be the best and easiest way to make that information available to Tony and perhaps others?
Mm-hmm. So we can include the information in our MailChimp that we send out, if that's a good way. We were going to put a poll at the top of the meeting to ask how people are finding out about information happening with Watertown Forward. So that might have been useful to know where to send this information, but we can post it on our Facebook group. We can also put that information on our MailChimp. And if anyone wants to directly message Watertown Forward for that information, if they're not on those platforms, we're happy to share that. It's all public, open to the public we just happened to just pull it out. So.
Okay, so great. We will work on that. It looks like, Mark, you want to offer a comment as well.
I just want to say that after the last meeting, I did have a long conversation again with Mike Ward, and him and his team and Chris McClure were going to go look for anything that might have been on the website. But if there are additional items, whatever you send, we'll be more than happy to make sure they are included as we move forward.
Great, thanks for that, Mark. And Nicole in our group said we will also post them on the Watertown Forward website. So there'll be multiple places people can access that information. Okay, so let's continue then. And just wanted to say on behalf of Watertown Forward, everybody's on the call today, that we're very pleased to have Town Council President Mark Sedaris and Town Councilor Carolyn Bays with us today. Thanks both of you for joining us. Both are obviously, as you know, members of the CRC. They'll be providing their insights related to Articles 2 and 3 and other topics as well. And they're going to take a few minutes to share their responses to a question that I'm going to ask to get us started. And then we'll open it up for your comments and questions. And then we're going to be asking them to make a final comment about something that we think would be important to all of us. Just by way of introduction, some of you may know this, others may not, that Mark has been Town Council President for 11 plus years and over 24 years on the Town Council. He serves on the school committee, he chairs the Charter Review Committee. He has made very significant contributions to the well-being of our town or our city for many, many years. And Mark, we thank you for being with us today and thank you for your service to the community. Carolyn was elected to an at-large position as a town councilor in 2018. She serves on several town council committees, including media and public outreach, education and schools, personnel and town organizations. She is a trained mediator, so that's probably a skill that is helpful in some of the situations she gets involved in. Carolyn has been a longtime member and a leader in Progressive Watertown and contributes to the community in many ways as well. So thanks to both of you for being here. As we get started, I just wanted to remind everybody that over time, we have created something called a platform of ideas. Tiffany's going to put it in the chat. You know, that's a kind of an evolving list of our collective thoughts and ideas about the charter. And some of you may want to keep that in mind or take a look at it as appropriate as you think about either your questions or proposals that you would like to submit to the CRC. So with that as a background, we'd like to start by asking both of you a question. We sent you this question just to let everybody know, full disclosure. We sent the question to Mark and Carolyn ahead of time so they could think about it. Let me just read it. Given the ongoing discussions around the importance of transparency, disclosure, communication, and equity, including what you've heard from residents in public comments and proposals, what are your own top 2 to 3 priorities for charter revision at this time? And why have you identified those as top priorities for you? And we can start with either of you who would like to go first. Let's take up to 5 minutes for that. When we get near the end of your 5 minutes, if you still are sharing information with us, I'll just give you an alert so you can finish your comment. Then we'll go over to the other person, and anything you didn't get a chance to fully say, you'll have a chance to flesh that out more during the Q&A part of our time together. So which of you would like to take the first 5 minutes?
Let Caroline go first.
Okay. Caroline, I think
being a gentleman, let the ladies go first.
You've been delegated to by the town council president, Caroline.
Okay, I'm happy to go first. So my top priorities. So I'll give you a couple of my top priorities, but I also wanted to say one of my top priorities are things surrounds things that I don't think belong in the charter, and I'll get into that. So One of my top priorities is to change the charter review committee's makeup. Yeah, I think it's currently too large. It shouldn't have so many town councilors, if any. And I actually was truly uncomfortable voting on the mayor versus manager question because it's to my benefit as a councilor to remain a manager system. But I asked multiple people if it was okay, and they kept saying, yeah, that's the way it is. So, but I really would have been uncomfortable voting on the 2 versus 4 year terms because, we have such a vested interest in changing it to 4 years. But having said that, we town councilors have a knowledge and insight that you just absolutely need in that committee. So I was trying to think, how do you balance that? And I would recommend that 3 to 4 counselors be appointed to serve at least as advisors to a committee. But I wouldn't have a committee over 9 people maximum. So, and I'm flexible about how it could be appointed, but you could have the 9 town councilors appoint someone, and that could also help with the absence of institutional knowledge, since you wouldn't appoint someone who didn't understand what was going on in town government. But before I move on to my second priority, I wanted to include what I shouldn't be in the charter. So Vinnie Picciarelli said that he felt that if it can be an ordinance, it should be an ordinance, and it shouldn't be in the charter, because you can get, and he has a good reason for saying that. We can get into trouble by over prescribing how the town should run, and accidentally tie the hands of government and force them into doing something that makes absolutely no sense to do. And so the fact that we could get ourselves into a bind by choosing language that later will come back to bite us, I really think that it is true that if it can be an ordinance that can be easily changed versus a charter, which cannot be, and you're stuck with it, I think it should be an ordinance. However, there are exceptions, which brings me to my final priority, which is, I think, even though it could be done by ordinance, that we really, really should include a Human Rights Commission in the charter. This is an exception to the rule, and that is because this is more than just another commission established by the town government. It's more than just what we should be doing, as an ordinance. This is a statement about our values. We are creating a preamble, and I'm assuming from what I've seen that it will have lots of statements around diversity, equity, inclusion, but nowhere else in the town charter are we actually putting our money where our mouth is. By including a Human Rights Commission in the town charter, we would reinforce that preamble statement of our values, and including this, as opposed to merely creating it through ordinance, would also reinforce that we are committed to these ideals, that we know that these are important, and that these shouldn't be in something that can be easily taken away by another ordinance or by removing an ordinance. That these are so important that they have to be incorporated into and reside in the document that is foundational to our town. By including this in our charter, it would reinforce and strengthen our commitment to the values of human rights, and it would demonstrate that we truly believe this is an important obligation for us to uphold the rights and pursuit of equity, inclusion, and dignity of every citizen in our town without exception. It would demonstrate that we believe this isn't a transient responsibility that can be established and removed by ordinance, but it's a necessary and permanent moral obligation to the citizens of Watertown. So that's why I think the Human Rights Commission should definitely be in the charter. So those are my values, my suggestions.
Thank you, Carolyn. Thank you for articulating your priorities and giving us a better understanding of why you think each of those is important. Recognizing that one that you said is not exactly a charter change, but related to what goes into the charter as opposed to something that goes somewhere else. So let's, again, thank you for that. And Mark, we'll turn it over to you. And if you could share with us what you think is really critical at this time, and why?
Thank you. In my mind, having gone through this process, this is the third time for me. This is completely different at this point. Part of it is because we were in a state of emergency and we started with Zoom, and I think more people have been able to participate, and more people have participated this time than ever before that I can remember. And thanks to groups like yours who were able to start communicating about how important this is, and having these focus groups and having these regular meetings and telling people what's going on, that's a key piece. So, basically we're looking at the charter, and I think we've kind of, we kind of have been doing things the way we were used to doing them out of habit. And to me, your question about transparency and all of that boils down to communication. And all of the things that we're working on changing in the charter now, be it having the manager speak to the community at least once a year, having the council president along with the council speak to the community, having the councilors be forced to have meetings with the community and be answerable to the general public. Also, though, we're expanding our web presence and our technology. We have just introduced Jean Ostroff, who is our new social media and web coordinator, and I've had one conversation with her, and I think we're going to we have other employees coming in that department that are going to help us. We need to we as a council need to do a better job answering to the community. And I think the communications piece in the charter, to me, is a high priority, and laying it out in the charter what's required. And I know we had some people on the committee the other night that said, well, we shouldn't have to have extra meetings. Well, if it's in the charter and you want to run for office, it's telling you this is an obligation that you have to meet to be answerable to the people that elect you. So I think that's critical. I do think we do have to find, Caroline's thought about the Human Rights Commission is a good idea. I do think we should have some discussion about it. I do agree with Vinny that a lot of these things can be done by ordinance, but I think that there has to be a way to strengthen the council even further, whether that be with additional confirmations of employees. But I know, as Mike Ward has explained to this group, we don't want to overcompensate either, because if you're trying to attract the manager and he's looking at a document that says, we're going to confirm every one of your employees, then that manager might say, I'm not coming there because I can't create my vision if I can't hire the people that I want to hire. So I think there's a delicate balance, but I do think that there has to be, some, additional opportunities for the council to weigh in. We talk about weighing in through budget policy guidelines, but that's not, I don't believe that at this point, that's the best way to do that. It is a good way. It's a process that began several years ago, but not every priority gets in there. And I'm not sure we should be calling them budget priorities. Some of them are citizen driven. Some of them are council driven because they've heard from their constituents. So, all of this boils down to communication. And we need to do, and it's got to be specified clearly in the charter that communication is there. And the council needs to have, some more authority to do things like, for instance, and I'm going to use this as an example, and I shouldn't, there was no budget for the Charter Review Committee. There was no budget for printing. There was no budget for expenses. There was no budget for a secretary. It's clear. And I agree with Caroline, 15 people is too many people and 9 councilors is too many councilors. I'm diverting my thoughts at this point, but I think maybe you should have 3 councilors and 6 people, and we can figure out a way to appoint them. But so I do think that that's too large and too cumbersome. But think about what 15 people are doing for a quote unquote 10-year review with no budget? How come we didn't think of this 10 years ago or 20 years ago? We're hiring our council clerk to do some overtime. We just got 2 applications, and we have 2 other clerks that may be able to assist us. And there's a referral on the council agenda for Tuesday to add, some staff, a consultant, or, so I think that if at the very least for me, from where I sit, this has brought this council review for the first time, and as many times as I've done this and as many times that it's taken place, it's opened our eyes as a community and as a council and as a committee that some things need to change, because things have changed in Watertown significantly and the demands are great, and we need, as elected officials, to meet those demands. And I'll
Thank you,
stop
Mark.
there. Sorry.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks for your insights about that and your priorities. It sounds like number one that you spoke to was communication, and you gave some examples, and more things could be in the charter to ensure communication within town between government and residents. You indicated strengthening the town council further. Maybe we'll have a chance to hear a little more about that in terms of some of the specific ways that could be done. You did mention several, and then you also commented on the makeup of the CRC itself, that needs a serious look for the next time we do this. So and again, thank you for that. So what I'd ask now is for each of us on the call here to think about some questions, some curiosity that you have. I'd invite you to come with your curiosity about some things you'd like to hear more from Carolyn and from Mark that they may have spoken to. So I know some of you may want to also make some statements at some point. I'd encourage all of us to start with your curiosity, some questions that you have, to hear from each of them a little further. And then we'll open it up and I'll kind of manage it. And as we've done before, if you put your hand up in participants, or some of you may be able to do that in reactions, then I will just call on people in order, unless I use executive privilege to call on some people who I see their hand popped up and I haven't seen them in other charter chats. I may shoot some of you over some of the quote unquote regulars, so forgive me for that. Let's see, and I think, so Jackie's hand is up. And I think we've got something that's going to come in by phone as well. But Jackie, why don't you go ahead and get us started?
Thank you. I really appreciate what Town Council President Sedaris said about trying to get that right balance. I think that since close to 2/3 of the responses and concerns seem to be about balance of power, I'm really curious about further thoughts on oversight and investigation of what goes on by the, and how we can help build the ability for town council to do that to do investigations and do more oversight. I think the idea of having a say in the appointment of department heads is a good start. But I'm just curious if there are other thoughts from either Carolyn or Mark or Tony or other people about what charter changes you would recommend to speak directly to oversight and investigation under that umbrella of balance of power. Thanks.
Thanks, Jackie. Mark, Carolyn, one of you want to start sharing some thoughts about that? About Jackie?
If Caroline, go ahead. I'll defer.
Okay. So I'm a bit of a traditionalist about separation of powers. So I do feel that there should be an the executive branch should, do the executive branch function, and the legislative branch should do the legislative. But part of a legislative branch is oversight. So you definitely should have, oversight of the executive branch. That's how you keep corruption out. That's how you, I haven't really looked at what other towns do. Well, I have actually. I do know that some towns have to approve appointments, which I could possibly see. I do think that in the appointments that we do approve, which are not the, not like chief of police, but for instance, the boards and commissions, one of the things that I actually want to see is I would like to know before we are approving these people on these commissions and boards, who all applied, because I feel like if we don't have that information, it's very difficult with full knowledge and understanding of what our choices are to approve these people. So that is actually one of the things I would like to see given to us as a right to see who applied to the commissions and the board, so that we know the full range of possibilities of who applied, and how the people we're actually voting on would differ from that. So that's one of the things that I've thought of that we might be able to do.
Carolyn, let me ask you a follow-up question to that. In your experience and judgment, is that something that would be codified in the charter, or is that something that would be made permanent in some other way through an ordinance or a rule or something else?
I looked in the charter. It actually could very quickly be put in the charter. I think it might be in my recommendations, actually. I think it could be codified in the charter with literally half a sentence. It could be by ordinance, but it might make sense because this is already in the charter that we approve all of the board appointments and commission appointments. I actually think it does make sense for it to be in the charter. I've been thinking about that because I was trying to figure out where I think it actually could go in the charter.
Thank you. Okay, Mark, what are your thoughts about this question that Jackie raised about oversight, potential investigation, and anything that Carolyn commented on regarding looking more broadly at who applied for some of these positions?
I want to I'll start with what Caroline's comments are. I think it could be added clearly with the half a sentence in the charter that says that the town council shall confirm all of the boards and commissions that they confirm, with the caveat there somewhere that the sentence that says, and the town manager shall provide a list of all applicants to that position. Just keeping it clean and simple, and that way there, everybody has an idea of what they're looking at. It's rare that someone does not get confirmed at the council level, but that probably could change if you are aware that there are other people that may have wanted that position. And maybe you're looking at this and saying, well, this person has been on here for 30 years. Why do we keep appointing this person? And I'm not saying that that's going to happen, but possibly that this is that could be a sentence. And I think it should be added to the charter. Back to the original part of the question, in what we're considering now is adding capacity to the town council. And I think what that would do, I think that you could use this capacity to have someone analyze. And I know I've looked at other cities and towns, as Caroline said she has. What are the best practices in how we approach, the council's oversight in day-to-day? Even though I agree with Caroline, a completely separate professional manager runs the day-to-day operations. We shouldn't be able as councilors to call up and say, hey, why didn't you do X? That's not what the role is here. But I do think that we could look and see if there's best practices with this additional capacity, and we could create that additional, anything additional we wanted through the town council rules or an ordinance. So I think that having that additional opportunity in the charter will allow you to do that in another way. And I don't think it needs to be specified in the charter.
Okay, thank you for that, Mark. I believe there was a question that was coming in with someone on their computer or maybe on their cell phone. Do we have that question, or can that person ask the question where we could hear it, or do we have to get it in some other way through anybody through an email, or help me out here?
Larry, is
Tiffany
this
and Janice?
Marilyn's?
Yeah,
question?
Marilyn had a question. I'm not sure if
Okay.
you had to raise her hand in the future.
Okay, Marilyn, can you hear us? And can we go ahead with your question? And if we're having some technical problems, keep trying and we will come back to you. Are you able to communicate the question, Marilyn?
I
Okay.
don't see anything in chat and I'm not seeing her come off mute.
Okay, we'll keep trying to get you connected somehow and find a way for you to ask your question, even if it's something you have to send in via email. And then I think let's move right now to Alana. You have your hand up, so please go ahead.
I'd like to hear some discussion by anybody, including the members of the CRC that are on here, but everybody, about future suggestions for how we choose the members of the future CRCs.
Okay. Since both Carolyn and Mark spoke to that, why don't we start with the two of you? And how would that take place in your judgment about getting a different configuration for the CRC and getting people on it?
You want to go first? I'll go.
Okay, Mark, you take the lead on this one.
My turn. I would specify that I would suggest that there would be 3 counselors chosen by among the members, and then that's the 6 people of the general public would put in an application, be somewhat vetted by the council president to make sure they live in town, they're a citizen of the community, and then either an ad hoc committee or another committee goes through 3 applications and interviews people and makes a recommendation to the town council, and then the full town council will appoint those 6 members.
Okay, Mark, that's quite a bit different from what the current process is, right?
Yes, yes, and
so-
it's drastic, but I think it's needed.
Yeah, and the reason you say that is why?
The reason I say that, because that, again, by having the full town council make the selection, it provides greater transparency, greater opportunities for people to say, okay, here's my case. You know, having one person choose this that's what it's been. It's very difficult, and it became this year more difficult because of the pandemic. And so I don't think, I think that this way more people will have an opportunity, more voices can be heard, and then the council can also weigh in and say, yay or nay, we think this is a good choice. And I think that would be a reasonable process in my mind.
So you don't want to have to do this again the same way 10 years from now.
It won't be me anyway.
Or 5 years from now. Okay, Carolyn, what's your take on this question about the CRC?
But it might be me, and I don't want to do this 10 years from now.
Good luck.
To be honest, I actually like Mark's idea. I have actually spent a considerable amount of time this weekend looking at the different ways that it can be done. And it's one of those things where I've just seen so many different ways that it can be done. I mean, from the residents voting, for the charter review committee, to us appointing. I actually like Mark's. I think in general, like, I'm flexible on this. So, I think that Mark's idea was a very, even keeled. I actually, though, however, really, the one part I don't like is I am just not so sure about having. I understand why, Mark. I really understand why you need the town council voice in there, because residents just haven't kind of been in the thick of it and don't understand how our lives will be impacted by these decisions, and how they don't understand how the charter works in practice, because they haven't actually practiced it. So we understand how the charter works. So we definitely have to have that voice in there. I'm just not sure that we have to have the vote. So, and because I do think that there are a few things that we vote on that are, crossing the line of us really having an interest in it that the residents would not have an interest in.
If I may, though,
Yeah,
when we're sitting as a committee now, there's the full council is there, and the full council is going to weigh in again. When you have it the way I said, you only have 3 councilors, which is not a majority of the council.
And it certainly
everything
helps.
Everything that comes back will get re-debated if needed. That's
Right.
the only reason that the only reason I would say that you would put councilors on there is for the experience, having lived and worked in the environment.
it sounds like the two of you are agreeing that whether that person, there are several people permanently on the CRC or their advisors, it would be important to have some people with that institutional knowledge be connected to that work of a charter review.
It would be vital. Like, you can't do it without it.
Yeah, okay. And how that would actually happen. A question came in from the chat, staying with this topic, is how would that committee be chosen? The committee, I think, Mark, you brought it up. What are your thoughts about the committee that would approve people from the community to be on the CRC? How would they be constituted?
Well, the council could create an ad hoc committee of 3. The council could use the Personnel and Town Organization Committee. It would really, again, be up to the town council to choose what method they would use. I wouldn't want to have, I think that's fair. And I don't think that, the council president should be picking and choosing this important group. It should be a collective effort. So I think that would be something that you put in the committee of the whole and decide who's going to be the 3 councilors.
Okay, thank you for that. Let me just ask Tiffany and maybe Janice, has anything come up in the chat that would bear on this topic that we're on now that we might want to ask Mark and Carolyn about? Or are we ready to move on to a different topic?
Not specific questions, but there's been some agreement around the language from a previous question around the transparency on who's applying to job positions with using quote and their resumes and getting that into the charter versus an ordinance. And then there's been some agreement as well and ideas from Anne about CRC alums might be an interesting pool for the committee to use, not counselors or town employees. And Stephanie V says, I agree that some TCs, even if just 2, should be on the CRC in the future.
Okay, thank you for that. And I see that, let me just check to find out if we've been able to get Marilyn's question, or are we still working on that?
Yeah, give it a try again. I think she might be back, and we'll give it another go.
And I also see Anne's hand and Alana's hand still up.
Thank you. Okay, Alana, I don't know, we'll come back to you, and Anne will get to you shortly. Marilyn, are you there, and can you ask your question if you are? Aha, still having a problem. Okay, we'll continue working on it. Let's see, Anne, your hand is up, so please go ahead.
Thanks. I would say it hasn't come up too much, but making people run for Charter Review Committee, I don't think is a great idea. I know that I never would have run. I've talked to Marcia about it. She never would have run. You never would have got either one of us on the Charter Review Committee. But possibly, I like Mark's idea about having a committee that is going to make referrals, and maybe Charter Review Committee alums from previous charter reviews would be a great pool to draw from, who could, given that we would have experience of having been on the committee and be able to, make wise referrals to the full town council for, to appoint people to the CRC. I think that, related to the makeup, I'm thrilled to hear people talking about a majority of residents. I really feel strongly that this town council gets to ultimately vote on this. So I think 7 residents with 2 non-voting councilors might be that might be a great makeup for a future charter review. 7 residents, 2 non-voting councilors that the council can, decide who to send. That way you have the knowledge base, the expert folks who can help guide, answer questions about about that. And then just going back to the Human Rights Commission, I am all for that being in the charter review. Caroline and I are absolutely on the same page. My concern very much is that referendums on human rights or civil rights are frequently not successful. And where we have so much hanging, so much hanging on this charter review, if it goes to the ballot and people think that, some people in town think that the Human Rights Commission is, an overreach or, snowflakes or whatever they're going to say, if they're going to vote it down based on that, we have a lot to lose. And so I just, I encourage everybody to consider that referendums on human rights don't generally do well. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay.
Carolyn, I think, has a response to that.
Okay, please go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, I would like to respond to that. So Anne is completely right. And I have thought about that. I just feel like if we lose this opportunity to make the statement, along with the residents who would come out and vote against it just for that one thing, but I think for every resident who would do that, there are many more residents who might come out and actually vote for the charter because it's in there. So and be enthusiastic about the charter because it's in there. And you're completely right. That is a danger. I totally get that. But I just feel like we can't be scared of this. We can't act out of fear and not do it because we're succumbing already before anything has even happened. We're succumbing to the fear of a response from the opposition. I think that we can't do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anne, and your thought about that, your comment about not putting it in so it would be voted on, what was your thought about how a Human Rights Commission might get established if it wasn't put in front of the voters?
Well, we've actually looked into this and it was discussed, I think at the, maybe it was the last charter chat with Vinny and I, where we looked at a number of charters that don't have them in the charter. And they can be and frequently are and have been created by ordinance. So I am absolutely all for it. And I told the folks who sent in the proposal for the Human Rights Commission, I really genuinely am all for it. And if you know me, you would know that I am all for that. But, where we have so much on the line with this charter review as far as changing, elements of the town and how it's governed, that Mike Ward talks about the need to have, good to have, and would be nice, nice to haves, or his 3 different categories, and we have so many must-dos that I am for that. And if we can do it by ordinance, I would like to see us do it by ordinance and have it be very strong and strongly worded, but do it by ordinance because this, but I appreciate Caroline's comment that it may bring voters to the polls specifically to vote for it. But I know that people who aren't for it, they rally around things like this to rally against it, and so vehemently that I don't want to be scared, but I want to be smart.
Thank you. We'll try to remember that phrase. Don't be scared, but be smart. Thank you. Tiffany, did we get that question coming in through email, or is it still in the works?
It's still in the works.
Okay, we'll hang in there.
A lot of agrees to Caroline's point, and I think that's no further questions in the chat. Okay,
so let me just put the question then back to the group to see if there's something that Mark or Carolyn said that you wanted to follow up on with a question. And if not, we can certainly take some comments from people and then we can ask them to react to a statement or a comment that somebody on the call here would like to make. Alana, I see your hand up. Was that from before or is this a new one?
I think it's new.
Okay.
2 quick things. I'd like to hear some more conversation from lots of people about the whole idea of possibly electing members of the CRC. I heard the idea that people wouldn't run for it, but I don't know, I'd like to hear that hashed out some more. And then as far as the issue about putting what we put on the charter and scaring people away and all of that, I wonder, I don't know, I think this is probably a technical question for Mike Ward or something. But is it possible to split some of those things up on the ballot so that people could vote yes on some parts and no on others? Not all the details, but maybe just the Human Rights Commission or the preamble separate from the details about, you know, the articles or something.
Okay, why don't we start with that second question to ask the two of you. What are the mechanics of people voting for the charter, both the town council itself and then residents when it has to go in front of the public?
Well, Larry, before it can get on the ballot, it goes to the town council.
Right, right.
And the town council can have a debate if there's something that they want to change. And then we would send that to the attorney to make sure the language is correct. And my understanding, and again, I can find out, is that it's an up or down vote on the whole package.
That would be an up or down vote by the public,
By the community.
By the
Yes.
community on the whole
Yes.
package.
Yes.
Okay.
And again, I will get that information to you as soon as I check the attorney to make sure that's correct.
Yeah. Okay.
And an up or down vote is yes, you accept the charter as it has been changed, or no, you do not. And Larry, I do have to run. I've been told my dinner is ready, so I apologize.
Okay.
I'm more than happy to come back.
Mark, can I ask you if you, I don't know if you have a minute or not, but if not, we'll get it from you afterwards. The final question was just about what are your thoughts about the level of public participation in the charter review and how residents might continue to feel they have a voice? If you want to say something succinct
Yes.
about that, go ahead. If not, we'll get it from you after today.
I'll just quickly say that, yes, I love the fact that this many people have participated. We've had charter reviews where sometimes 3 people come into the room, and we've had 6 meetings where nobody comes in the room. So this is great. And as I said earlier, all of the public's proposals and questions and answers continue to be, we tried to do the best we can to get them included in the conversation, and some of them do overlap. So maybe your specific question from Mrs. Smith doesn't get in there. It's because it overlaps with 4 or 5 others. So, and we will try to make sure we do a better job keeping that updated as soon as we can. We do have some more help and try to get
Well,
them.
thanks again, Mark. We know this is a big undertaking on top of everything else, especially at this time. So
the only other thing you forgot, I have one other thing to add to I am also the chair of the school building committee doing 4 schools right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So thank you all for your time, and I apologize. And I'm more than happy to do it again.
Thanks very much. We'll be in touch.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye. So Carolyn, maybe just to finish off this question that was in front of you and Mark a moment ago, this up or down vote by the town council, by the public on the charter. That I mean, what happens if the community says down?
So maybe Tony knows. I don't know. I guess, do we revisit it? Tony, do you know? Or just
Tony, you're muted.
And as far as I understand, you don't revisit it.
And that's just, and we revert to our original
charter.
The existing charter. Okay, I was just wondering. I've never gone through the process.
Yeah.
With this kind of detail. I remember voting for the charter last 10 years ago.
Well, these rules about decision making in a community about things that are important are important.
Yeah, I do want to say though that I looked at the ballots from the last 3 reviews, and the ballot wasn't an up and down. The ballot indicated different things that you could vote yes or no on. So I don't know where the question about it being an up or down the answer comes from, but I have the ballots for the last 3.
Mark said it was an up or down by the town.
Yeah, I don't think so, but that's just, he'll get clarification, because as I said, the ballots that were used in previous charter reviews had a line for each one, a yes, no for each issue. So we'd have to clarify that with the town attorney.
Great. So what we'll just say to everybody who's on the call today that this is an important question. Several of you have raised it. Mark will get the answer to us. We will make sure we get the answer out to everybody in the Watertown Forward network because it's an important question. Anne, is your hand back up? If so, go ahead.
It is, because I specifically asked Mike Ward these questions at the end of the last meeting. And he said, I believe that he said it was an up or down. And Caroline, to answer your question, if the community votes against it, it's done. And we got to wait 10 more years, or unless we change the year ending that we do the charter review. And somebody mentioned a specific charter review that was just voted down. Maybe it was Mike, or maybe it was Bill Oates. Somebody in the last meeting specifically referenced a town that voted all the charter changes down. And somebody said, what happened? They said, that's it. It didn't pass. So you just keep the charter as it is. So Tony, if you have that, then that's fantastic. And if we can line item some stuff on the ballot and get some different items, then that would be fantastic. And I would love to have, particulars, the preamble, a human rights commission, some other things. If we could line item, I think that would be great. And it would remove a lot of pressure from the committee, certainly that I'm feeling, because it's like, I think the number one thing is changing the makeup so that the next one is different, because regardless of everything else we change, if we go forward and have the full council again with 6 residents, I mean, we've seen it's so difficult and unwieldy to try to manage 15 people. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Ann. Janice, go ahead.
Thanks, Larry. This is kind of a topic shift, but I wanted to go back to something you mentioned, Carolyn, in your answer to the first question. And I've been grappling with this, and I'm just curious about your thoughts. The idea of sort of accidentally tying the hands of the town council and being really specific in the charter. I go back and forth on this because I think in some ways it really harbors a decent amount of accountability, especially with some of these communication measures we're trying to bring in, like having people hold a certain amount of meetings a year to address the town, and even the charter makeup, being specific about those numbers. And what I'm hearing is though in those areas you tend to agree. I'm curious about where you see that being a hindrance. Has any proposal come up where you thought that you were a little bit nervous about that? Because so far what I've seen is I think being more specific is probably better, but.
Okay, I'll give you an example. So, okay, yes, I voted against the research analyst position. I wanted B, because I don't want our hands tied that we have to hire a research analyst if it turns out that that particular makeup of that town council has the experience necessary to deal with those things. But I will give you a good example of where our hands are tied. And we are doing something now that's a little nuts because it's in the charter. We have to put this whole thing in the charter, but I actually think we need to change it. But right now we're looking for a vacancy for District D. That person is going to be in for all of 6 meetings. They're not really going to be able to contribute a lot. Why are we looking for that vacancy? Because I was like, the charter says that's what we're supposed to do, and I'm not going to vote to violate the charter. I take this charter very seriously, but it really doesn't make sense for us to be doing this because they're not going to be in for very long. They're not going to be up, whoever it is. It doesn't matter who it is. I don't care how close attention that they're paying. They're just not going to be up to speed. And that's an example of where the charter said it, so we have to do it. But I mean, we can change that in the charter, and I'm kind of hoping that we will give the opportunity, that we'll change it and allow us to have the opportunity to vote, that we won't, it especially wouldn't make any sense the last 6 months. You can't even do it in time. You can't even replace a person in time. So I think that there actually should be an option for us to vote not to replace the counselor in the last 12 months of the, but there's an example of where we're doing something that's a little nuts because the charter says so.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, Carolyn. If I can just respond to that, I think therein lies why, having long debate and discussion about each of these proposals is so important, because you wouldn't necessarily think about that if you just take it at face value, whatever's in the charter right now, fill a vacancy, very broad. And that's where I think as a resident, I get concerned that we're sort of rushing through all these proposals. I mean, even John Hecht's proposal about changing the balance of power, which I'm really thrilled passed, but for there was no debate. And that was a huge decision. And I was like, ooh, nobody had any comments about this. And we're debating salary for 15 minutes at the previous meeting. So that's just, those little things I find them interesting, but I'm really glad to hear your perspective on something that's actually in the charter right now that is tying your hands, because it gives me a good reference point in that conversation. So thank you.
Thanks, Janice. Tony, your hand is up. Go ahead, please.
Well, if it's okay, I just have a couple of comments on this. Carolyn and I don't come to agreement on this at all.
For once, it's like the only thing we just opposite side.
I wanted to say this while Mark was here, but I think he understands generally my position on it. But let me say first off, we haven't changed that much. So at this point, if we were to put this, and I did check. The 1991 had a yes, no. The 2010 and the 2001 was it all or nothing, and so was the 2010, all or nothing. But the 1991 had a ballot with certain yeses and nos. But let me just say that we haven't made that many changes. So in a sense, if we were to do it right now, John Hecht's piece, for example, is really, as Mike Ward said, as a reinforcement of something that's already there. It's not particularly new. It's just a reinforcement of what's part of the charter already. My take on this is, if there's something in the charter, I see this in three buckets. If there's something mentioned in the charter, you can then amend what's there. You can take it away, right? Or you could add something to it. But if it's in the charter, then it's open game. The second part to me is those that are implied in the charter. There's something that is implied in the charter, then you could add to it, and it doesn't have to go into ordinance. And then the third things are just something completely new to the charter that was not there before. It's not implied by anything that's presently in the charter. It's just adding to the charter. I have been banging the drum that this is the opportunity to make some changes. This could be very much reflected on the fact that I was in the last charter review and we didn't do much, and that I've sat on the council, this is my 12th year, and you get frustration with the lack of movement on things, so that you take an opportunity to make those changes permanent in the charter. You can have criteria. Will this charter change limit you, or will it expand the powers of somebody else or limit someone else's powers? But to walk out of this charter with, okay, we're going to put John Hecht in there. We're going to give ourselves a little bit of an okay to hire someone. We're leaving the town manager, mayor the same. We're leaving Mark the same as who's going to sit on the school committee. You could count the number of changes on your hand. And that's not, to me, what a charter is about. And if you don't have the kind of robust discussions about it, adding a human rights commission, adding a police accountability proposal, making it possible for town councilors to weigh in, not requiring them to, but to weigh in on appointments to boards and commissions, and to weigh in on appointments to administrative positions. Those are things that might beef up our role as a council. But there's a lot in here that could be discussed and should be discussed. My fear is that the way we're moving right now, we're going to just have this list that Mike put together just be a full list of all the things that you could do by council, by ordinance. And then this list will sit someplace and you won't get anything accomplished. I want to recognize that Councillor Feltner already took advantage of saying, well, we're going to do it that way. I'm going to put an ordinance in already. And she put an ordinance, a proposal for an ordinance, not an ordinance, proposal for an ordinance for a fiscal analyst for the town council. But this can easily be put on the shelf as soon as things get rolling, and you won't get any of the changes that you'd like to see.
So Tony, you're very concerned that there will not be sufficient or significant enough change, given the opportunity we have here and the short, and it's maybe made worse by a short time frame, and maybe by the fact that so many people are already town councilors who are on that. I don't know. There's a bunch of factors. But you're very concerned that the community and the committee will not seize the opportunity here to do something more significant.
That's right.
Yeah, and do you, other than exhorting people and hoping, you know, that maybe people will turn that around in some way, what are your thoughts about how to not have it be that way? Is it to extend the time now, or what are some of your thoughts about that? And then we'll get, maybe Carolyn can weigh in as well.
Well, I have two thoughts. One is that I think that the public needs to weigh in on these questions at the CRC. And I don't mean the 2 or 3 people like Elodia and a few others who talk. I mean more people have to weigh in on whether they think, for example, should the town council should the town council be the ones who appoint the police commissioner, the Department of Public Works, and and a community and development director? Those are 3 key positions. Should the town council appoint those and not the town manager? Should the town council have the right to give its opinion of the 2 finalists for any of those positions? Whether the town manager wants to take those opinions in, that's another question, but at least give the council the opportunity to share their opinions. Those are the kind of questions that I think need to be, should we have in the charter new positions? I think a position of a communications director and a position of a diversity officer are important things that should be in the charter. People should weigh in on it. The second way that people should, if there's any way to build any support for it besides people, is to just try to convince councilors and members of the committee that these things should be discussed and should be voted on. My fear is that they won't even get a hearing.
So thank you for that, Tony. So in the time that we have left for this, a couple more minutes, I'd like to just ask Carolyn if she wanted to respond to what Tony was suggesting here. And then Carolyn, we want to go back and ask you that final question that I asked Mark, and then we'll do a few things to wrap up. So can we get your thoughts about?
I understand the frustration, you know, and maybe I'll be there 10 years from now too. I understand the frustration about not getting things done. I'm hoping that this town council, like, now that I know what I'm doing and I'm up to speed, and let me tell you, your first 2 years as a town councilor, you're like a toddler in training. You know, you're just trying to figure out how it works and what's going on. But I'm hoping that we can get some of the stuff that's causing the frustration. I still disagree that the place to sort of cross that line is of executive versus legislative branch is in the charter. I still am sort of a purist around my constitutions and how government is structured. But I do understand the frustration, and I'm hoping that will end and that we can actually start to get things done with this town council and the upcoming town council with whoever the new DNA are.
Thanks, Carolyn. So in the last couple minutes that we have before we do some things to wrap up, I wanted to ask you the same question that I asked Mark before he left. And so let me just read it. So we all know this has been a challenging time to undertake a charter review. The CRC has been working hard and many residents have tried to stay actively involved. What are your thoughts regarding the level of public participation in the charter review and how residents might continue to feel that they have a voice?
So I am thrilled with how, I mean, I know that for some of you, this doesn't seem like there's tons of participation, but I talked to Mike Ward. This is lots of public participation. This, you know, they don't usually get this. So I'm really thrilled to see so much public participation. And one of the main ways right now to get the residents involved is by reading what you have put in as you know, things that we can put in the charter and helping to advocate for those things and having the residents also advocating for some of the items that the residents, you know, the Human Rights Commission, I was planning on putting it in anyway, but I actually had residents push me to make sure that I put that in. So really in many ways, it you know, even though I was thinking about it, the residents actually pushed me. So in many ways, the residents have already made a difference in how much I'm going to advocate for this. So even if I had put it in, maybe I wouldn't have advocated for it as hard, but I'm ready to fight for it because residents, and I know they're behind me and I know they want me to do this. And so don't underestimate how important it is to have that advocacy and have people standing behind us. Like if you find a champion and you want somebody to do something, knowing that you're behind us to do it is really important.
Thank you, Carolyn. Thank you. Very, very helpful to hear that from you. And I know for those of us who want to continue to have a voice, it's good to hear what you just said. So with that, I think we can turn it over to, let's see, I think Emily, right? Are you? Yes, Emily, you're on now to take us to finish up our time together today. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much, Larry. Thank you, Carolyn. And, you know, of course, Mark, who's here for joining us today. It's been wonderful to hear from you all. And as a reminder, we have, of course, upcoming events. So the next Charter Review Committee meeting / public forum is Tuesday, June 1st at 6 o'clock. And we encourage everyone to continue going to the Charter Review Committee meetings. Our next Charter Chat will be the Sunday after that June 1st CRC meeting on Sunday, June 6th. Again, from 5 to 6:45. And like I mentioned in the beginning, we are extending the time a little bit so we have some more flexibility and can hear from as many voices as possible. The next preamble subcommittee meeting is Monday, May 24th, which I believe that is tomorrow at 5:30. And the communication subcommittee meeting is Thursday, June 3rd at 5 o'clock. If you have any questions or comments, please direct them to forwardwatertown@gmail.com. You can also visit our website at watertownforward.org. And we also have a Facebook group that you can join and continue the discussion offline. And again, please continue to submit your proposals, sending them to all the counselors, Mike Ward, and the CRC general email. We have that on the website. Use their individual emails and not the general CRC email address. And we talked a lot today about some ways that you can continue to get your voice heard through so many proposals. But if you're still stumped, we have the platform of ideas if you need any language or ideas or inspiration. So please continue to use that. And that is also on our website. Again, continue to attend CRC meetings and participate in any subcommittee meetings and send any general comments to the CRC as well. So thank you so much for coming. If you're not already on our mailing list, please email us and we can add you to our MailChimp and invite your friends to the next Charter Chat as well and continue to get people involved because it's really important. So again, thank you everyone for joining and we'll see you next time.